Gang, the EU is headed for collapse as support for Italexit surges. That's right. We really appear to be looking at nothing less than the last days of the European Union. We're going to take a look at the latest surge in support among Italians to leave the EU and how it's all part of what appears to be nothing short of the implosion of major globalist structures throughout the entire world. You're going to absolutely love it. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here. I certainly hope you're all having a safe and sound, lovely lockdown Thursday. Before we take a look at the very real prospects for an Italexit and the collapse of the EU, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's ratefamily.com. Now, one of the unfortunate things we have to deal with is the simple fact that all of us leave behind final expenses such as funeral costs, medical bills, and other debts. In fact, I don't know if you know, but the average funeral alone costs between $8,000 and $9,000. So what that means is that having no insurance when you die can leave your loved ones with a huge bill to deal with. And obviously nobody wants that. But you can take control of your family's destiny today and have the satisfaction that they'll be financially taken care of. So make sure to click on the link below and visit our sponsors, ratefamily.com, and get a free quote. No waiting periods, 100% benefits. Even if you've been turned down before, they guarantee coverage for everybody, no matter the situation. It's true, they guarantee coverage for everybody, no matter the situation. So don't wait. Click on that link below and visit ratefamily.com or simply give them a call at 1-855-919-RATE. You'll be glad that you did. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. The Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte is warning that there is a very real risk that the EU is indeed headed for a complete and total collapse. The Express is reporting that Conte has launched a scathing attack on Brussels and their inexcusable ineptitude during the entire coronavirus outbreak. Speaking to the BBC News, Italy's leftist prime minister claimed that the coronavirus pandemic has been the biggest challenge faced by Europe since World War II, and it's clearly been a challenge that the inept bullies in Brussels were not up for. At issue right now is the failure of European leaders to come together as a unified whole to confront the virus. Italians are furious that they've had to turn to Russia and China to get much-needed medical supplies because of the ineptitude of the bullies in Brussels. Germany in particular, the leaders there at least, were faulted for this in terms of their reluctance to share their more than 25,000 ventilators with Italy. And as the Gateway pundit has been pointing out, think about it now. How many times were Europeans told about their supposed solidarity during the 2015 migrant crisis? Right? We're not going to let anyone forget this. How many times have they been lectured to by the bureaucrats in Brussels that every member nation had to help out and take out their fair share of refugees, take in, I should say, their fair share of refugees. But then the pandemic crisis hits Italy and they're all basically told in Italy, hey, you're on your own, figure it out yourselves. On March 12th, as if it couldn't get worse, as Italy was being ravaged by this virus going to full-blown shutdown, the European Court of Justice sentenced Italy to pay 7.5 million euros in fines because of some faulty aid that they received, and the court fined them an additional 80,000 euros a day for every day the fine wasn't paid. I mean, how do you even think this way? And so it's no wonder that according to the latest poll now, over 30% of Italians, more than 1 in 3, want to leave the EU immediately. They want a referendum, an Italexit referendum, and they want out. They have had it. And keep in mind, things are being made even worse in terms of the economic fallout from all of this. That's yet to even really fully hit Italy as well as Europe as a whole. You ready for this? The economic fallout promises to be worse than the economic collapse of 2008. And keep in mind, Southern Europe is still recovering from that fallout. They're still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. Now, a financial crisis is happening right now that's going to be even worse. Now, I'm not trying to frighten you, but what I am trying to do here is to show you how more and more pundits are realizing that the days of globalization are indeed coming to an end. And this may indeed be the end of the EU as we've known it. Take a look at this piece from John Gray over at the New Statesman. Why this crisis is a turning point in history. The era of peak globalization is over. The era of globalization is over. These are becoming commonplace articles at this point, most of which are being written by bona fide globalists. They're mourning. They're literally going through the stages of grief. So they pass through denial, they pass through anger, and now they're actually trying to make sense of it all. The very globalist structures that have dominated the world order over the past 3 decades are imploding quite literally everywhere. And he noted that one of the major indicators for the death of the globalist world order was precisely the fact that China inserted itself in place of the EU by assisting distressed national governments like Italy. The only way that the EU has thus far responded to the crisis has been by revealing its essential weaknesses. The way John Gray puts it is this: the EU's fundamental flaw is that it's incapable of discharging the protective functions of a state. And while there's no question that the breakup of the Eurozone, of course, has been predicted 1,000 times prior to this, it's almost comical how many times it's done. Having said that, given the stresses that they face today, the collapse and disintegration of European institutions is emphatically not unrealistic. Think it through. Free movement has been completely shut down. Turkish President Erdogan is blackmailing the EU by threatening to allow hundreds of thousands of migrants to pass through its borders. The national debts accrued as a result of the economic collapse is unfathomable. You combine the threat of a mass Syrian migrant onslaught, Afghan, Pakistan, Northern African onslaught, combined with an economic depression, that would certainly be enough to implode the EU. And this is especially the case given the rise of the nationalist populist right throughout the continent as the political left begins more and more to wed itself to the failed European project. The nationalist populist right will only continue to dominate European politics. And we are indeed already seeing this most particularly in Italy. Look, when you have a leftist government, a truly leftist government like what you have in Italy, when they start sounding like Matteo Salvini of Lega, when they start excoriating the bullies in Brussels, denouncing the EU as inept and incompetent and incapable of governing the continent through this pandemic crisis, I think we're seeing the beginning of the end. In fact, that's precisely what Prime Minister Conte is saying. If the EU is not able to find a coherent economic policy that can effectively rescue the continent from the threats of the virus, as well as the border control and security necessary to effectively thwart the threats coming from Turkey and their unleashing a flood of migrants into the continent, if they cannot do that, you can kiss Brussels goodbye. Gang, this is a leftist prime minister talking to. This isn't Matteo Salvini. This isn't Marine Le Pen. This isn't Orban. This is a leftist prime minister talking this way. Leftists are warning that the EU could indeed collapse in weeks. We've never seen anything even remotely approaching something like this. It's stunning. We have to remember that even before the pandemic, a number of experts believed that the EU was in its most weak and vulnerable position since its inception, which in turn rendered the EU really a sitting duck for any crisis to come along and blow it apart. The EU was that vulnerable before the pandemic. This is why so many are now saying that this pandemic really could be it. This is the crisis that could, in fact, blow the EU apart. So what we're going to have to watch for in the coming months or weeks is the extent to which the nationalist politics that have arisen as a result of this pandemic maintain an overt hostility towards Brussels. If that's the case, I think we're going to see referendums like the Italexit and Frexit and Nexit, right? Italy, France, Netherlands, Hungary, you name it, that will accompany the highly successful Brexit. I think the genie is really out of the bottle on this one. And like we talked about in last weekend's video, last Saturday's video, I think that genie's already out in France, even in Macron's France. It appears increasingly likely that we're going to see a Frexit and a Italexit, at least a referendum to vote. And I think we're seeing the EU become Humpty Dumpty. It is cracking, and there is no way of putting this thing back together again. We're going to have to see what goes on, but I think we might end up seeing dozens of Nigel Farages arise all throughout Europe. All right, so we're going to take a look. Absolutely. We're going to keep taking a look at what's happening here, but I think we are seeing the collapse of the EU right before our very eyes. Now, before you go, you'll definitely want to check out my video I just uploaded on the collapse of fake news media as our ad revenue begins to completely shrivel up. You're going to love it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.